It's 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 Eastern time, where we're here every Thursday chatting with you, chatting with each other, chatting about things that we are up to, things that are happening in the world, all centered around planning, parenting, and really prioritizing yourself, helping you save time, and achieving your goals. That's what we're all about. I'm Natasha.
I'm Allegra.
And together we are Beyond Your Wildest
Your
Dreams, or
Wildest Dreams.
BYWD.
And
Welcome.
we like to talk to you every week about a topic. And today's topic is saving time and energy by planning your month. But we always start our podcast. If you're listening as a podcast, we do upload this chat as the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, available on all platforms. So we always start with some chit chat and then we get into our topic. And today's chit chat actually has a little bit of shape to it because Natasha and I sent to Natasha a Surgeon General's warning that just came out yesterday.
So it's serious, y'all. This is serious.
It's serious, yes. The Surgeon General's warning, parents are stressed out. And I don't think any of us are surprised by this, especially since Natasha and we reread this. It was around 70-page report about how parents are burnt out. And if you want our one-page cheat sheet that summarizes this report and gives you 3 tools that you can do in less than 2 minutes in order to avoid burnout, you can get that at our website, bywdreams.com. But I mean, this has been something that many of us have been talking about for a long time, but I guess it has finally trickled up to the Surgeon General. And that means it's extra serious.
It's really serious. Like, can you imagine? I mean, I don't, with all the different types of declarations that the Surgeon General has made over the years, I'm like just surprised, not surprised by
the cigarette warnings,
right?
Parents' mental health,
right? Yeah, like it's up there on that level, and just that it's being acknowledged on a national level, that it's being acknowledged in in a serious way by like medical professional, not just a health care professional, or mental health care professional is what I meant to say. So, that in and of itself is, to me, is like, wow, this is really being elevated or escalated, and I'm thinking about how long ago was it that Hillary Clinton said it takes a village, where it became part of like the consciousness of the United States is, like just in the lexicon of that became like a catchphrase after a while. But, obviously that's been, you were an anthropology major, it's been taking a village ever since the very, very beginning of human creation.
Right. It was always a village.
Yeah, it's not news really, but, just to have it be acknowledged on that level. And now it feels like it's being acknowledged. And she said that in a campaign context, right, where she was, talking about populist ideas and finding ways to help our children in a community type situation. But now it's getting to the point where it's elevated to a medical or mental health crisis situation.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Where it's being acknowledged in this really like, just more tangible way. I don't know. That's not really the right word, but just, I don't know, official. It feels official now that the Surgeon General has said it.
Yeah, it does. It feels more official. And by the way, if you're listening to the podcast, the place where you can get our one-page cheat sheet is tinyurl.com/BYWD stop burnout. That's BYWD stop burnout. And so it does feel more official. It feels like there's some extra gravitas behind it. And look, Natasha and I, if you've been with us before, you've heard our lives, but Natasha and I lead very middle-class lives. Like, we are not, the fact that we have our own businesses, yes, but I probably make less with my business than I could have if I had gotten a regular job. So I just want to put that out there. I think one of the reasons my family lives well is because, one, I'm really good at doing a lot with a little. And 2, I do most of my buying secondhand. Like, I'm just looking around at all my furniture and pottery and whatever in my house, and either I've gotten it for free from the Buy Nothing group, or I've purchased it secondhand. And same with my even everything on my body. I think the only thing new here was this.
And this is several years old.
Right. Several years old at this point.
Yeah. We're doing a whole lot of purging in our home. And by the way, and we've just purchased a bunch of furniture because my boys are in their own rooms. All of it on Facebook Marketplace, either got for free or, paid way less than half. But so because we're doing all this purging, I was just saying to my husband, like, I know we're getting rid of a lot of these clothes. It's not always the best for us to donate them. And here's why. And I had him watch this video, and they start off with the statistics of what we used to spend on money and the amount of clothing we would get in the 90s as compared to the average American today. So, and it is it's like triple the amount. But we're not spending as much. So this is the whole fast fashion thing and a lot of but also where all that stuff goes. So that's just a tangent. It's right there. The mountains, right there.
The mountains of clothing that are piling up in third world countries.
Right, exactly. So you donate them, and it doesn't always get purchased by somebody else and reused. It gets dumped in Ghana or some other country that's mountains of clothing, which has a lot of plastic in it too.
I literally wear things out, and when feasible, turn them into rags. And when not feasible for rags, I put them in the trash because they are trash at that point.
Yeah. But there's this company that we use called they have this thing called the take back bag, where they will recycle your clothing to the point where so you can put shoes, belts, accessories, anything. So if you got something that's got holes in it and you can't make it into a rag, and it's not, can't donate it or give it away on Buy Nothing, they will take that fabric and they will recycle it.
Oh, good. What's that company?
It's called the Take Back Bag, and it costs $20 to.
I see one at 4days.com.
Yeah, that's it. 4 days. That's the name of the company. And they have this thing called a take back bag. It costs $20 to get the bag, but then you get a $20 credit towards items that, if you want it. And they have a lot of of course, renewable type, whether it's clothing or other types of items. And then you can use that credit. So it does cost you a little bit, but man, for me, it's worth it. I want to spend that $20 to make sure that, this shirt, that there's no way that I can make this into something else or donate it to someone. It's not possible. It's going to wind up in the garbage. I throw it in the take back. I have a little take back bag corner that we're using for.
Cool. Yeah. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Donations. Yeah. And it's worth, for me, it's worth, I just cram, they take, old pillowcases, things that you probably, things that, you probably can't, some things that you really can't reuse or, put up on the Buy Nothing because it's just past its usage. They'll take care of it. They will make sure that it goes to the right place.
Yeah, and they have some they have some products that I use already, so I could just use that credit towards there.
Right, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Yay. I like that.
Yeah, I'm a fan of their services. Yeah.
Well, so just going back to the topic of the mental health crisis that the Surgeon General issued a statement about, that parents, I'm just going to read a little bit about it. Surgeon General's new warning: parents are stressed out. America's mental health crisis is weighing heavily on parents struggling with economic and societal concerns as they try to raise kids. The big picture: being a parent has never been easy, but it's become perilous helping kids navigate a brittle social media structure and outsized peer comparisons. So I guess that's all the, I guess, what did we call it when we were growing up?
17 magazine? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
You'd look at, you'd look at commercials or you'd have magazines, but you didn't have it in your pocket all the time, pinging you, notifying you, and then, how, even as adults, people only show the very, very best of their lives. Right. And so you can absolutely feel, but it's even more, I think it's even more influential on those.
Well, when we were growing up, it was just famous people, right? It wasn't also quote unquote regular people.
Right. That you were competing with or comparing.
So yes, comparing. So it's perilous helping kids navigate the social media landscape and the peer comparisons, along with stressors like gun violence and loneliness. And I'd also like to add drug use. I mean, I personally, one of the things that I am always concerned about is accidental exposure to fentanyl, because if you didn't know, fentanyl can be absorbed through the skin, and it's literally 3 pieces of salt amount is a fatal dose. 3 pieces of salt. So I don't know about you, but I actually have a bottle of Narcan because I was like, if I'm around that on accident, I want to be able. Narcan is the nasal spray that counteracts an overdose. And like I said, an overdose can be 3 pieces of salt amount of fentanyl. So,
And Narcan
that's
is
something
super easy and super safe to use too. Like if you use it, even if you just think you might have been exposed and you're not correct, it's still super safe. So it's a good idea to have around because you really can't mess up the administration of that stuff.
but it does make me mad that I even have to think about that. Because it's hard enough figuring out the whole how to pay for having a child and how to pay for all of their extracurricular activities and how to give them healthy food. And I get tired of the fact that I have to read all the labels. Like, for instance, something people might not have thought about is the fact that because we have to have, what is it called, fire retardants so back when everyone smoked, like in the 70s, they passed a law that required upholstery fabrics to be covered in fire retardants and also synthetic mattresses covered in fire retardants because people were dying smoking in their bed. And I don't even know how common it was that people were actually dying smoking in their bed, but some lobbyist out there for a chemical company got this law passed. And now we have crazy amounts of flame retardants showing up in our bloodstream. And, I went through to great pains to make sure that we don't have any fabrics in our house that have fire retardants on that. And, another thing that had flame retardants on that was pajamas, again, related to this whole sleep thing. And I'm like, hey, my kid's not sleeping and not smoking in bed. She's 7 years old. Why does her pajamas need flame retardants? That makes no sense. So anyway, there's the drug use, there's the gun violence, there's the paying for the kids. Then there's
this
things
unprecedented amount of stressors So when Natasha and I suggest to you that you take mental health moments, these are things that are weighing on us personally, stressing us out personally, and we don't have the staff. Like no one cleans my house, no one watches my kid. No one cooks my meals. I just want to put that out there. So when I am saying, hey, take a few minutes to do these things, it's because I benefit greatly from taking the time to do these things. And it's not easier for me to do these things than anyone else because I have staff. So I just want to put that out. Right. And the thing is too, and it's really, I'm so glad that this is in a conversation on the national level, that it's being acknowledged on the national level. Are the way that communities are structured, or the way our society is structured, is wildly different than it was when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. And I thought to myself, I'm like, how did my mom seem to be able to do these things with a lot less stress, it felt like. But when I think about it for a second, yes, she worked out of the home when we got to be like school aged. We were like quasi latchkey kids. She got home maybe a little earlier than some other moms and so forth. But there really was like this opportunity, when we were home, she's like, go outside and play, right? The neighbors were watching and that kind of thing. So you had the community, but also the life was just not moving at the speed that it's moving today, right? There's apps for everything. There's apps for your kids, for your kids' soccer games and for their teachers and for the classroom and for the clubs and for the, so there's just so much moving so quickly, so much information coming at you, so much to manage. It's just wildly different.
Yes.
My mom will say to me, she's like, I don't know how you do it all. It seems like a lot. And I said to her, I'm like, Mom, you used to, do the same thing, take care of us and whatnot. But it definitely is moving at a wildly different pace, and the expectation is wildly different, and for sure some improvements in the way that people parent today, I think generally, than than the whole seen and not heard kind of attitude that may have been around a little bit more prevalently when we were kids. So there's a lot more emotional toll on parents. And of course, the economic, if you take a look at, of course, the way that wages have not risen to the level of
Mm-hmm.
expenditures, that
Yeah.
the amount of output that the American person does compared to what they did in, let's use the 70s as an example, and the wage equivalency. So, it's just much harder to make ends meet, right? In
Mm-hmm.
general. And then you throw parenting on top of that,
Yes.
which is like a huge, lifelong, 24-hour nonstop job.
And so what the advisory has said is that there are two things that we all can do to help ourselves. The first is prioritize stress relievers like exercise and sleep and recreational activities, which is basically the whole reason Natasha and I started Beyond Your Wildest Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Was, we say our mission is to help working moms prioritize themselves. That's the number one thing, prioritize themselves, because for too long, women have been encouraged and applauded to sacrifice ourselves on the altar of our families. And where does that get us? Bitter and exhausted and
burnt out. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not good for your family that way too.
No.
By the way, but you deserve to not be bitter, burnt out, and resentful.
Yeah, just in general.
Just in general. Yeah. So
and
this sleep, my God, important too. So important.
So important. And I've really just had to train myself to let go of the belief that, but if I do this one more thing, I'll get so much further ahead. And it's like, no, it's just one more thing. That one more thing. And that one more thing can wait until tomorrow. And guess what? Even if you do that one more thing, there's still one more other thing that you could do too. And it can be never ending. And so you just have to get to the point where you're like, nope, there's nothing on social media or on the streamers that I need to watch. And actually, for me, the easiest thing is to just have a no streaming, no TV, no movie rule for Monday through Thursday. That's the easiest way. Because I, like all people, once I get into something, I want to see how the next episode is. And the next episode.
Binge watching is a real thing.
Yeah, no, I love binge watching. I love binge reading too. Which is why sometimes I won't buy my favorite author's books until I know I can just binge it.
Yeah, because you're like, if it's just sitting there, it's just calling to you.
It's just calling to me.
Yeah.
So I've really, having that rule of no streaming Monday through Thursday, no looking at social media after 6 p.m., having those rules is way more effective for me than saying, I'll just do a little bit. And because that little bit never is just a little bit.
It's never just a little bit, and you lose track of time, right? You're just kind of like, I'm just going to respond to this one thing. And next thing you know, it's been a half hour, an hour sometimes, right?
Exactly.
And that's also true for what I've been finding is we're transitioning back into the school year. And our routine is different. I used to drive my son to school, come back, I'd meet up with my husband, and we would take our dog for a walk. And this would be the time in the day that he and I would do some catching up, and we would get a little bit of exercise in. And that was our Monday through Friday routine. And that's different now. He takes them to school and he's gone, right? So now I'm home by myself, and it's my job to walk the dog. But what gets to me is like, I'll just unload the dishwasher first. I'll just kind of fold a few things like that. So there's always something. And guess what? Then the dog is like, because he doesn't go in our yard, right? So, and then, obviously, eventually he will either have an accident in the house or, but.
And that's a big accident.
It is.
Her dog is
100
and how many pounds?
130.
130 pounds. So that's not a small accident.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's only happened a few times, but it's enough to be like, yeah, we're not having that happen again. But so it can be social media. There's always going to be something. The laundry's always going to need to be folded. You're always going to have to answer that email and stuff like that. And, we of course proponents of the 2-minute rule, right? If it's something you could do in 2 minutes. But I find myself going then from something like, it's only going to take me 2 minutes to do this. And then that kind of leads me into something else. And the next thing I know, like I've foregone my exercise, or next thing I know, like, oh my goodness, now I have my client is starting in 2 minutes. I don't have the time to do that 20-minute workout or whatever. And I'm talking like small workout. This is not a huge time chunk, but I push off taking care of myself because there's always something pulling at you, right?
Yep.
Always. Yeah. So this is the part of the prioritization. It's not necessarily like find an extra hour in the day. Like you're not going to find it. We all have the same amount. We all have the same amount of hours a day, just like Beyonce, 24. That's it. You know, but you know, she's got a staff. Um, we've got to find we get to prioritize ourselves, put our sleep first, put our exercise first, put our mental health first. Nurturing relationships is another one of the things that they recommend.
Suggestions, yes.
Yeah, one of the things that help you with your mental health and lowering your stress levels.
Yeah, and if you also prioritize relationships with people who can help you or you can help each other, perhaps you can find a parent where you take turns taking the kids so that you can prioritize an hour alone doing whatever it is that you want to do once in a while. It
Mhm.
makes a big difference taking even just like once a month saying, you know what, I just need 2 hours to myself and finding some like 2 hours once a month is not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things.
No.
But it will feel like a mini vacation.
You can start with an hour too if 2 hours feels too luxurious or too decadent. We had friends when our kids were younger and they were babysitting age that we swapped once a month. We did a swap, right? So their kids would come and spend the night or just a few hours on a Saturday, whatever we worked out. Their kids would come to our house. They would get to go have a date night because that saves you $100 right there on babysitting, you know. And then they would take our kids another weekend for, you know, whatever, 3-4 hours. Sometimes it would be a sleepover. But we would just, you know, swap it once a month. So we each got to have a date night once a month. And because it's scheduled, because you're involving people outside of yourself, it happens, right? Before that, my husband and I would say, let's have a date night once a month, which doesn't even sound like a lot. We're just talking, you know, but that would be hard for us to do just because we would, other things would pull on us. And next thing you know, the month had gone by and we didn't have that. But when we involved other people and we, you know, did a swap like that, it got done. It happened. Now the kids don't need babysitters, so that's kind of nice.
So we just want to emphasize, this isn't just us saying parents, moms need to prioritize themselves. We've been saying it, for 4 years now? Like, you need to prioritize yourself. The Surgeon General has agreed with us.
Yes.
So that's why we're spending so much time on this topic right now, even though this
national health crisis.
It wasn't our topic originally. It's just that this advisory just came out yesterday, August 28th. And we'll put it in our show notes if you listen to the podcast or if you watch this after it's recorded. We will put that advisory in the show notes so that you can read about it. Because
also we'll put a link into 4 days too, if you were interested in getting rid of, you know, your unusable fabrics and accessories and stuff that they can recycle. I'm a huge fan of that company. But it is a national health crisis. I am really glad that this is being acknowledged in this way.
No, I'm so happy that it's bubbled up to this point. And, you know, I just think that things are different when our leaders, you know, personally, I've always believed, and I'm just going to put this out there. Personally, I've always believed that we should kind of follow, not that everything in ancient Rome was great, but I think the fact that ancient Rome had two people at the top was actually a smart thing. And so I just think that it's different when you have someone at the top who has done some child rearing, which is something that I've experienced recently at my church, where our senior minister is a mom now. And the minister that she replaced was not a parent. And they just have a different experience. And so, you know, if we're not going to have someone who is actively a caregiver at the top, just for society to recognize that caregiving is important work. Like, if you want functional citizens, then you need parents who are able to parent. And so to have them recognize that, I think, is huge and feels like a shift. You know,
It's huge.
There's this historical fact that I just think is really fascinating, which is during World War II, during the whole Rosie the Riveter thing, right? All the guys were out fighting. And so what did they do? They needed women to go and fill in the jobs in the factories. You know what the government did? They set up care facilities. The moms would drop off the kids would be fed and cared for all day. And when the moms would pick them up at the end of the day, they would be provided with dinner, and they would take dinner home and they could have dinner as a family. And then as soon as the war was over, those were shut down. So it's like the government realized then, hey, we got to help moms out if we're going to need them in our factories. Well, you know what? We could still use help. We could
Yeah,
still use help.
seriously. Yeah, and
So,
the approval for that program was off the charts, and they're like, well, we're gonna scale that back. We're done now. Let's just put you back in the home and make you a single income family, and you can everybody buy their own dishwashers, their own appliances, their own television
yeah.
sets, and yeah.
So I'm glad that there's this re-recognizing of the fact that we need help, we need policies that support us. And the advisory talks about that too, about how the government and employers and community can help support people who are actively raising kids. So, yay, exciting. And
it is exciting. It's an exciting crisis.
It's exciting to see recognition.
100%. It really is, because if you can name the problem, if there's a first step is in admitting that you have a problem, America.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, I don't know if you know this, and by you, I mean people listening, but America is one of only 2 industrialized countries that doesn't have paid federal leave. Mm-hmm. One of only 2. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
So, okay. Anyway, our topic today was supposed to be saving time and energy by planning your week, but we've effectively run out of time.
This was too important.
Yes.
So next week.
This was so important. So we will put this off until next week and just wrap this up by saying, check out our 1-page cheat sheet where we summarize the 70-page study on parental burnout. And you can get that at tinyurl.com/BYWD stop burnout. We just summarize that study, and then we give you 3 little tips that take less than 2 minutes, but will actually make a huge difference in terms of creating a wedge. Natasha describes this really well. So I'm going to let Natasha talk about creating a wedge, because you might not think doing anything for 2 minutes is going to make a difference in your life, but it will.
It does. It really does. So just going ahead, it's this idea of going ahead and just putting even in, we say 2 minutes, but you can start with 30 seconds. You can start with 60 seconds. And just going ahead and putting that in place, and then you can expand from there. So the example that I like to use is when I make my smoothies, I now do a stretch because I feel like I need to stretch, right? So it started off as a 1-minute stretch. I would press go on the smoothie on the blender, set a timer for 1 minute, and do a 1-minute stretch. That's 1 minute more than I had been doing, right? And guess what? That has expanded into 2 minutes, 3 minutes, right? And so even if it isn't something that seems like a life, like, well, 1 minute, what's that going to do? That is 1 minute more than you've been doing. And chances are, once you've gotten into the habit of doing it, the example that's often given for this is called the Kaizen way. It's a Japanese concept, is going ahead and exercising during commercial breaks. And now that streaming services also have commercial breaks, we're back to that again. You can go ahead and get up and do jumping jacks for one of the commercials. It even has a timer on when you're streaming, right? It tells you have 60 seconds or whatever. Great, get up, do some jumping jacks. It's that kind of thing and then next thing you know, you're in the middle of jumping jacks. You're like, oh, maybe I'm just gonna do a little bit more, or that kind of thing. So creating that wedge, putting that in there, just putting it in place has a huge effect. Even if it's starting small, has a huge effect. It snowballs.
Yeah, and there are other things you can do. Like one productivity expert, he does 10 push-ups every time he goes to use the bathroom. And actually, there was a new study, we'll have to include this in the link, that shows that if you do 10 deep squats every 45 minutes, so set a timer, 45 minutes passes, you stand up, you do 10 deep squats. If you do that during your workday, that's more effective than getting a 20-minute walk in.
No way.
Yeah, so that's another
know.
great Kaizen tip, right? If you just do 10 squats every 45 minutes. And so I have a timer on my thing, and whenever I'm sitting down at my desk, I set my 45-minute timer to do the 10 squats. Because again, it's little bits of movement, little bits of mental health throughout the day is more powerful than once a year you take a 3-day weekend or whatever. You need to have a
Right.
little bit every day to really make an effect in your life on a daily basis. So
Thanks for
thank you so
joining
much for
us.
joining us.
We'll see you next Thursday where we're going to chat about planning your week.
Yeah,
We'll
saving
see
time
you-
and energy by planning your month next week.
Yeah, next week. All right. Take care. Dream wild, wild dreamers.